In the heart of the Indian Ocean lies an island that remains unknown to most people. It lacks any native inhabitants, sees no tourists, and has no commercial air traffic. Booking travel there isn't possible, and it barely appears on ordinary maps. Back in the 1960s, British authorities expelled the residents who once lived there, clearing the way for the United States to construct an exceptionally secretive military installation. So isolated, so distant, and so vital that it has backed every significant U.S. military campaign from Vietnam through Iraq and Afghanistan. The facility accommodates nuclear-capable B-2 Spirit stealth bombers and maintains vast reserves of fuel and munitions sufficient to support combat across 3 continents. Positioned right in the middle of the Indian Ocean, it sits roughly the same distance from the Middle East, South Asia, and East Africa. U.S. leaders have described it as virtually essential for worldwide security efforts. Then on Friday morning, Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles toward it. Early Friday local time, Iran sent 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles at Diego Garcia, the shared U.S.-UK military outpost in the Indian Ocean. A U.S. official informed CNN that both missed the target. Neither projectile landed. One broke down during its flight while a U.S. naval vessel intercepted the other. The installation remains fully functional and undamaged. Yet the real significance isn't the failure. It's that Iran attempted the launches at all. Diego Garcia sits about 4,000 kilometers from Iran. Up until Friday morning, Iran had voluntarily restricted its ballistic missiles to a maximum range of 2,000 kilometers. Now Iran has demonstrated nearly twice that distance. And if Iran can strike Diego Garcia, it can potentially reach something far less discussed in Washington or London. It can reach Europe. Begin with understanding what Diego Garcia truly represents, since most viewers have never encountered the name and require clarity on what Iran sought to attack. The United States has labeled the Diego Garcia facility as practically indispensable for security missions across the Middle East, South Asia, and East Africa. It houses roughly 2,500 personnel, predominantly American, and has underpinned U.S. military actions from Vietnam to Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2008, the U.S. admitted its role in covert rendition flights carrying terrorism suspects. Last year, amid heavy airstrikes on Yemen's Houthi forces, the U.S. positioned several nuclear-capable B-2 Spirit bombers there. Around 2,500 American staff, nuclear-capable B-2 bombers, covert activities over 5 decades. This isn't merely a logistical outpost. It's the premier symbol of American military reach in the Eastern Hemisphere. Diego Garcia belongs to the Chagos Archipelago, a cluster of over 60 islands in the central Indian Ocean near India's southern edge. Britain has administered the islands since 1814, when France ceded them. During the 1960s and 1970s, Britain displaced up to 2,000 residents from Diego Garcia to enable the U.S. military to establish the base. 2,000 individuals uprooted from their homes, their island wiped from civilian awareness, their heritage and society dismantled, all to grant the United States an installation so far-flung that no opponent could touch it, until Friday. On Friday, Iran directed ballistic missiles at the joint U.S.-UK military facility on Diego Garcia, revealing a weapons capacity exceeding what Tehran was previously believed to possess. Beyond what Tehran was previously believed to possess. Those precise words come from Bloomberg. Iran has now displayed to the world a weapons capacity that American intelligence had not entirely anticipated. The consequences of this disclosure extend well past one isolated island in the Indian Ocean. Consider the technical specifics of the event, because the missile type reveals precisely what Iran aimed to showcase. The assault featured 2 ballistic missiles that never arrived at the atoll. One suffered a failure en route, while the other faced interception. The episode has exposed an Iranian missile capacity surpassing earlier assessments. Diego Garcia is situated approximately 4,000 kilometers from Iran's shore, twice the 2,000-kilometer limit Tehran has long declared officially. Twice. Iran's stated ceiling stood at 2,000 kilometers. Diego Garcia lies 4,000-kilometer distant. Iran attempted to strike an objective double the distance it had publicly claimed possible. Iran aimed at the island using a 2-stage intercontinental ballistic missile, according to Israel's military. Justin Bronk, a lead researcher at the Royal United Services Institute Defense think tank, noted that the effort against Diego Garcia possibly involved an adapted version of Iran's Simorgh space launch rocket, which might achieve extended reach as a ballistic missile, albeit with compromised precision. The Simorgh serves as Iran's space launch system. Iran has openly advanced it as part of a civilian space effort. The very technology capable of orbiting satellites can be redirected downward to carry a payload to virtually any point globally. Iran has now redirected its space rocket toward the world's most concealed American military installation. Jeffrey Lewis, a prominent global security expert at Middlebury College, informed CNN that Iran had been working on an intercontinental ballistic missile before Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei established a 2,000-kilometer range restriction in 2017, after which development shifted toward space launch purposes. Khamenei set the 2,000-kilometer restriction in 2017. He is deceased. The individual who enforced that restriction died on February 28th, and just 22 days later, Iran launched a missile toward a target 4,000 kilometers away. The restriction perished alongside Khamenei, and the current supreme leader, whom observers previously believed might prioritize Iran's armament efforts more than his predecessor, has now provided a definitive response through deeds instead of statements. Turn now to the Europe aspect, as this element is quietly alarming NATO capitals and merits open discussion. Tehran asserted that the operation showcased abilities for extended distance strikes, with Diego Garcia positioned at roughly the same range from Iran as large portions of Central Europe. Iran has just sent a missile 4,000 kilometers. Berlin stands 4,100 kilometers from Tehran. Paris is 4,300 kilometers away. Rome lies 3,100 kilometers distant. Warsaw sits 3,400 kilometers off. Trita Parsi, co-founder of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, told CNN that the attempted strike indicates other U.S. bases, once considered safely out of reach, may now fall within range, along with American naval vessels previously kept 3,000 kilometers distant. Parsi added that it certainly places specific European bases in their sights, and while he wasn't certain if Europe would reassess its posture, it undeniably heightens the danger for them. American naval vessels deliberately stationed 3,000 kilometers from Iran because military leaders viewed that as a secure separation. Aircraft carriers, logistics ships, the vessels sustaining the broader conflict from what seemed a protected position. Iran has now proven those vessels may lack safety. And the European installations, NATO facilities in Romania supporting U.S. refueling aircraft, RAF Fairford in England used for B-1 bomber launches against Iran, the bases in Cyprus, all now lie within the proven reach of an Iranian missile effort that discarded its voluntary limit the instant the man who set it was eliminated. Parsi observed that the failed Diego Garcia attempt prompts questions about whether Iran possesses additional weapon types we hadn't credited them with, possibly employing unknown systems. For 22 days, this conflict has proceeded under the belief that intelligence estimates of Iran's military strength were broadly correct. Friday morning shattered that belief. Iran possesses at minimum one weapon system that U.S. intelligence had not completely grasped. The unanswered question tonight is what other capabilities it holds that remain undisclosed. Consider Britain now, because the timing of this assault has generated a political emergency in London unlike any Keir Starmer has confronted since assuming office. Reports indicate the strike occurred prior to Britain's announcement that the United States could utilize British bases to conduct operations against Iranian targets linked to ship attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran launched missiles at Diego Garcia before learning Britain had just permitted U.S. use of British bases for Hormuz-related actions. Iran was already aiming at Diego Garcia. Britain then escalated its exposure by formally involving it in the conflict. Iran's foreign minister declared that Keir Starmer is endangering British citizens by permitting UK bases to support aggression toward Iran. The Prime Minister also faces domestic criticism for expanding American access to UK bases, thereby risking British lives. That statement from Iran's foreign minister constitutes a direct threat against the United Kingdom, not America, not Israel, but Britain, a nation that has sought to remain peripheral in this conflict, declining to allow its Cyprus base for offensive missions, carefully managing its role to prevent becoming a primary target. One of the missiles directed at Diego Garcia was downed by a U.S. warship. The other failed during flight. Britain denounced Iran's irresponsible actions following the unsuccessful base attempt. Irresponsible, that is Britain's chosen term. A nation that has endured Iranian drone strikes on its Cyprus facility, seen its vessels harassed near the Strait of Hormuz, and witnessed disruptions to its LNG imports from Qatar over 5 years, is now branding Iran irresponsible for targeting the base it recently approved for American military use. Domestically, Starmer encounters unforeseen backlash from his choice to grant base access. Starmer spoke with the Cypriot president Saturday morning, reaffirming that RAF Akrotiri would not serve U.S. strikes on Iranian missile locations. He also conferred with Bahrain's crown prince about the conflict. Starmer is establishing boundaries. Cyprus off-limits for offensive use, Diego Garcia allowable for defensive purposes, RAF Fairford open for strikes. He seeks partial engagement without full commitment. Yet Iran responds by threatening every British presence in the region, irrespective of Starmer's offensive versus defensive distinctions. Finally, the crucial link tying the Diego Garcia incident to the wider war. Israel announced that operations against Iran would intensify substantially in the coming week, mere hours after Trump indicated he was contemplating a reduction in U.S. military involvement in the Middle East. Trump speaks of scaling back. Israel speaks of major escalation. These conflicting messages from presumed partners managing the same campaign have rarely diverged so sharply. Trump's criticism of transatlantic partners arrived despite his statement that the U.S. neared fulfilling its goals and was weighing a drawdown of Middle East military commitments, nearing fulfillment of objectives. Iran answered that comment by dispatching long-range missiles toward the planet's most secretive American base. On Saturday, Trump posted a 48-hour ultimatum on Truth Social, cautioning that the U.S. would target Iran's power facilities unless the Strait of Hormuz reopened. 48 hours. Power plants, if Hormuz stays closed. That deadline concludes Sunday evening, and Hormuz remains shut as of now. Daily vessel passages through the Strait of Hormuz have plunged to almost none from over 120 earlier this year, per Charles Schwab's data analysis, from 120 daily transits to virtually zero. The channel transporting 1/5 of global oil has virtually halted for 22 days. Iran, which has just launched missiles double its acknowledged range, is now given 48 hours to restore access or face destruction of its power infrastructure. Iran's response arrived via its foreign minister. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated Tehran stands prepared to enable Japanese vessels to transit the Strait of Hormuz, noting ongoing talks with Japan on the matter. Japan may proceed, America may not. Iran is selectively permitting passage based on nationality. Japan bargained. Japan passes. America's partners receive nothing absent their own direct negotiations with Tehran. This marks Iran imposing a fresh economic and diplomatic framework in the globe's most vital sea lane. Want your vessels to navigate waters hugging Iran's coastline? Negotiate directly with Iran, bypassing Washington. And the Dimona element, occurring the same day and rarely linked fully to the Diego Garcia event. It represented the war's first targeting of Israel's nuclear research facility. Israel's covert nuclear reactor lies about 13 kilometers southeast of Dimona. Both locations neighbor multiple military complexes, including Nevatim Air Base, among Israel's biggest. Israeli authorities reported prior interception efforts before the strike and said the matter would undergo review. Early video from the Iraq scene displayed a bus with shattered windows, severe structural damage, and dozens of emergency responders at 2 distinct impact zones. Israel's rescue teams reported 4 serious injuries, including a 4-year-old girl plus 29 minor injuries. Dimona, Israel's nuclear reactor, core to Israel's unacknowledged nuclear program. Iran struck it the same day it targeted Diego Garcia. The same day Trump delivered a 48-hour ultimatum concerning power plants. 2 nuclear-related sites, one in the Indian Ocean, one in the Negev Desert, attacked or attempted on the identical day. Iran has moved beyond conventional warfare alone. It is signaling what it views as acceptable targets. A nation's nuclear research center now appears on that list, putting everything in perspective and outlining the current situation. Iran dispatched 2 ballistic missiles toward Diego Garcia, 4,000 kilometers, double its declared range limit. A U.S. warship intercepted one. One malfunctioned. Neither struck. The base continues operating, yet the demonstrated capability stands. The 2017 range limit Khamenei set vanished with his death on February 28th. His replacement has revealed Iran's true reach to the world. That reach encompasses Central Europe, U.S. vessels kept 3,000 kilometers away, and NATO installations throughout the Eastern Hemisphere. Analysts suggest Russia and China likely supplied the targeting intelligence enabling the Diego Garcia attempt, since Iran lacks adequate satellite coverage over the Indian Ocean for independent data. Russia and China furnishing targeting information for a missile strike on America's most concealed global base, 3 nations involved. A conflict that began as a U.S.-Israel effort against Iran has become one where Russia contributes intelligence, China possibly supplies parts, and Iran launches at targets once deemed untouchable. Trump mentions winding down. Israel mentions significant increases. The 48-hour ultimatum ends Sunday evening. Hormuz transit site at 0. Iran has struck something it wasn't supposed to reach. A 4-year-old girl suffered serious injuries in Iraq. Dimona faced targeting for the first time. Somewhere in the Indian Ocean, a U.S. warship occupies the position where it neutralized a missile headed for America's most secretive base. There had been conjecture that Iran might possess strike capacity beyond its claimed 2,000-kilometer limit. They simply hadn't revealed it. The Diego Garcia attempt appears to be that revelation. They revealed their hand, and the cards they hold exceed what Washington anticipated when initial strikes began on February 28th. Before wrapping up, I want your thoughts. A. Iran launched missiles 4,000 kilometers. Diego Garcia sits the same distance from Iran as Central Europe. Do you believe Iran will now target European cities or NATO bases if the war persists? B. The figure who set Iran's 2,000-kilometer missile limit died on the war's opening day. His successor just demonstrated double that range. Was eliminating Khamenei the war's greatest strategic error? C. Trump says winding down. Israel says increasing significantly. The 48-hour ultimatum ends tonight. What occurs if Iran refuses to reopen Hormuz, and Trump must choose whether to strike the power plants? Drop A, B, or C in the comments immediately. This stands as the war's most critical military shift, and I review every comment. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The 48-hour ultimatum concludes tonight. Tomorrow may prove the war's most decisive day.